Jefe Greenheart has filmed Matthew McConaughey, Tim Ferriss, and families of 3 US presidents.
A production company can be anywhere, in my experience, from like a 30 to 60% profit margin company with the particular type of media that we produce. The pandemic just sort of pulled the rug out from under us. All of our work evaporated overnight.
He sold a video production company, generating over $1 million in revenue.
There's a universe where some people have told me I could have almost doubled, the value.
Today, he's the rare guest who'll tell you exactly what he got wrong in the sale. Jefe, welcome to the pod.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, Kate.
Jefe, so you sold your business in December 2020. Take me back to what the company looked like before the sale.
We had hit our stride as a company. We had a beautiful team that with a great culture of, between 8 and 12 internal employees in our heyday, and about 150 contractors that would work with us on a project basis in our video production company division and our event entertainment division. This was before kids, so we were so stoked to be traveling all over the world. We traveled with the Wanderlust Festival, which is a yoga music nature festival. We helped them as their creative content partners as they scaled from just one festival out in Lake Tahoe to a global brand that was taking us to New Zealand and Australia, Hawaii. They touched Europe, and it was just a dream. And in a lot of ways, I didn't realize how special it was to have the type of team, the type of clients we had, because we had an ecosystem of clients that all sort of knew each other, and that just made the business function so well. And so, we were at about 1.2 million in annual revenue, and we felt like we were just getting started. And then the pandemic hit. We also had a baby, and there was a lot of uncertainty. We probably didn't do it soon enough in retrospect.
That sure sounds like you had a very special company with a great team. You won South by Southwest 2 years in a row and landed NBA contract. How does a small studio like yours land work of that caliber?
Yeah, so the short answer is relationships, I think. Our relationships are our reps and then ultimately our reputation. So previous to that, we were working with ACL Music Festival and Lollapalooza, who are both, they were acquired essentially by Live Nation. And we just really hustled, and Live Nation was affiliated with some other partners that effectively had both that NBA opportunity and South by Southwest. And so, again, I think a lot of our success was this sort of ecosystem of clients. We had an unfair advantage with our company having those two divisions, where we would also supply some of the experiential at some of those festivals, which was a joy. But yeah, we were very agile and able to work quickly, and all of those things applied really well to the South by contract, which was essentially, I'll say, it was all the stuff off of the main stage at dozens of venues across the city. Austin is the city of celebration. That city of celebration can also be a city of chaos. And one thing that our team did really well was thrive in chaos and do it with a sense of care and caring about the experience. So we were hustling, but we had open hearts, and we cared about how we treated folks in the process. That's not always a given in the production industry.
Thrive in chaos. I love that. And sounds like you were able to upsell your existing clients thanks to the event side of the company. And also through relationships, through introductions, grow the company. Months before the sale, you just won the biggest contracts of your life. By December, you were selling. What happened in between?
Yeah, so like a lot of folks, the pandemic just sort of pulled the rug out from under us. And especially as an event entertainment company, being a prominent division within our company, all of our work evaporated overnight. We looked at pivoting to virtual events, but that wasn't really a capability that we saw as something that we were excited. We did it to a certain extent, but we also knew on the horizon that we didn't want to overinvest in that. I remember being on the plane, coming back from Utah for a production, and my director of video operations sort of looked over the airplane seat to me, and he said, "They just announced South by was canceled, and the NBA season is canceled." So what that told us was both of those contracts are gone like that. And the good news was we were agile with some of our clients that we could be, in terms of how can we repurpose the content that we do have in the can, including on that trip coming back from Utah. How can we spin out, through these, some of the virtual events, existing footage, because everybody was online constantly at that point. How can we just create offers focused around post-production? So we did a lot of that, but still it's just the revenue wasn't there in comparison to, being out in the wild. That said, one of my anchor clients was starting to come back and having field productions, and it was on one of those productions that I was doing out of state with one of, my anchor clients, one of my top 3 clients, and they had invited me into, to essentially do a project with a billionaire that was sort of key to their operation, their media company, and a lot of the stories that they were telling. And we were starting to tell his story. And I sort of realized, like, oh, wow, we're actually really trusted to be in this room. This is like, this means something. And we had been serving them for 2 or 3 years, and slowly but surely becoming their top vendor for what was their biggest account within the media company. After a few months, they developed a strategy where they were ready to grow. And I remember, that summer sort of teasing out a conversation of what it would be like to acquire my team. They weren't looking for my clients. At the end of the day, they were looking for our capabilities, our team, our talent. I'll say I didn't realize that the extent of that value, how well we were serving them with their top client. And so, that the conversation, sort of was put on hold around the end of the summer, but it was reinvigorated. I remember around the holidays, maybe starting just before Thanksgiving. And effectively by the end of the year, or, within the first 2 weeks of January, we had a deal. And that, I'll say that overall the experience was mutually beneficial, but there was so much I could have done better because I just wasn't educated in the M&A world. And yeah, that's why I think it's so important for people to understand what they're worth and bring in trusted professionals on your side with the negotiation, which I did not do. But there were some things that we did do that set us up in a good position.
First of all, speaks so much to your skill set as a leader that you were able to turn your team around and focus more on post-production and get this work going with your anchor client. So you mentioned that the negotiation was very quick. You restarted the conversation in December, and by January you had a deal. What did that negotiation look like?
We made the choice at the end of the day instead to just lease it out, because the way that it was drafted, I was only needing to be on for 12 months. And so we decided to do the lease of equipment for those 12 months as well. And I also realized that because we were going to align this in a way where my wife could still run the video production company for our other existing anchor clients, it sort of became a win-win at the end of the day. My wife ran the company in a much more lean way than we had ever done before that year. And so we were sort of operating in parallel. And that was our biggest year. I realized we could have leveraged a much better deal to go all in and earlier with this client that I came on with.
I'd love to double tap into that. Knowing what you know today, what do you wish you would have done differently in order to get more out of that deal?
Gosh, there's a lot I wish I could have done differently with the deal. Number one, I didn't even know what a multiple was. There were 2 members of my leadership team that absolutely should have came along with the deal. Their capabilities and the systems and processes that they led and enforced. When I got under the hood with the company, the way that our SOPs were documented versus what they had in place, I realized there was so much that could have been deployed, both with the operational capabilities of my team that could have been installed, as well as, those actual systems that we developed together. And so I think this led in the beginning for me to a little bit of frustration of oh, I wish we could just do it this way instead, because it was the way that I was used to doing things within my organization. And so making that transition from owner operator to, a director on an account was pretty jarring for me.
Can you speak a bit more about the financial structure of the deal and what understanding multiples would have done for you?
So I'd say our EBITDA was in the low 6 figures. I think I sort of I didn't even consider putting together the value because it was just one division of our company. And I felt like there was a sort of synergy that existed with the 2 divisions of the company, how they operated, how they worked, and sort of leaned on each other, that I didn't even recognize the combined value of those divisions. This is with the knowledge now that this particular media company is doubling down on having an events capability now too. And it's actually one of the things that is taking them years to build out. But I think a big part of it was a combination of knowledge and mindset. There still was plenty of value in my event entertainment company that could be applied, and that the combined value of the event company and the video production company would increase my value, my multiple. By how much? That may be just speculative, but there's a universe where some people have told me I could have almost doubled, the value by that combination. That said, there was still so much there that was of value, and so if I had the knowledge to not only position to present it as part of the offer of what could be on the table. It was really this combined understanding of that value, what it could be worth, how that would relate to the multiple, the ultimate value of the company, but then also just the belief that there was still something there. We have another anchor client that I found out, in one of their board meetings, they said, we can't, we were called Circus Picnic at the time. We can't let Circus Picnic know just how valuable they are to our content system, because then we couldn't afford them. And so I think that is kind of part of our success too, is that we were able to produce such value for our partners, but we didn't realize how much that was worth. And so part of that is lack of, market research or understanding market value. So there were definitely times when, those closest in my life that are a lot better with finances would say like, it seems like you might be being taken advantage of. And I never saw it that way because I had such trusted partnerships. And at the end of the day, I started to learn how to be able to find other budgets across departments with some of the companies that we would work with. That being said, we always over-delivered because even though we would be, cut from an 8-person team to maybe a 5-person team, we take out those line items. At the end of the day, we're like, well, we feel like we can be more operationally efficient with our, overnight editors to edit some of this content that, we're willing to cut into those margins because we just want to produce excellence and because we cared so much about our reputation. But I think at the end of the day, a production company can be anywhere, in my experience, from like a 30 to 60% profit margin company with the particular type of media that we produce. And that being said, there were plenty of times where we could have made the decision to operate in a way that we were more at that 50 to 60% margin. And on the projects that were a lot of fun and would help boost our reputation, we actually had a rubric, a decision-making rubric, and would score it. And like, oh, okay, this is a big marketing opportunity, or this is like something that it's going to meet our creative edge. We would rank everything, and we were okay with having a lower score on the financial return if there were some other elements that were higher. So it's not like we were just shooting from the hip. We had a pretty well-defined idea of, the give and take.
And the mindset shift is essentially believing that the second part of your company that wasn't being acquired is valuable enough that it should be considered for the sale, and just in general, how valuable your company was? Or were there any other mindset shifts?
Yeah. So I think beyond us not believing in the value of the event entertainment company capabilities just because, events were on hold temporarily, the other sort of mindset limitation was also probably just our belief in our worth. And so, as a husband and wife team, I think on some level, and I think some entrepreneurs can understand where this comes from, you're still not feeling, you're on this pursuit of achievement to finally, hopefully, come to this place of feeling like you're successful, you're valuable, and on a certain level, you're worthy to be in those rooms with those billionaires, like I said, worthy to be, the person to lead the meeting, when you sort of have imposter syndrome at times. There's so much when you're in a place of owning your brag, as I like to call it, and fully stepping into the confidence of your creative capabilities. Not only are you more powerful, but you can be more in your purpose. I love to produce meaningful media. I love to help leaders that are ready to scale with story. And I can make that much more of a big impact in this world if I operate from this place of, this is what I was born to do, and you better believe I'm valuable.
Wow. What has helped you overcome this imposter syndrome?
I'll say community. Brotherhood, particularly. I'm in a community that it's called Front Row Dads, and it's a global brotherhood that has a big presence here in Austin, Texas. And it's a group of entrepreneurs that want to crush it in business, but they also want to be super intentional at home. And so being in that community now for the past several years has helped tune me in to what I have to offer. But I'll say that it's not necessarily that element of people recognizing what a big stage you're playing on. To me, it is tapping into the deeper sense of, honestly, a combination of healing generational trauma, healing the little one within us all that's maybe still sort of searching for validation and seeking this sense of like, are you proud of me? And so doing that deeper healing work has created a much more solid foundation for me to show up, to believe in myself, and believe in our craft and our product at the end of the day. I'll say that that's been a big part of my path is, nurturing those more vulnerable, sensitive parts of me and not just puffing out my chest in business. And because I can be pretty performative too. It's like, it's part of the game. But at the end of the day, I feel so much more integrity and whole as a person because, I've nurtured these parts of me that didn't feel like I was supposed to be in those rooms.
I think it's so important for us to hear. I think most entrepreneurs experience some form of an imposter syndrome at one point or another, and just hearing about the healing journey and coming out on the other end is incredibly valuable. Can you share a bit more about the financials of the deal and what you walked away with?
At the end of the day, it's estimated that we would have been, over, the mid six figures mark. There was no one else that had equity in our company. And while we didn't get any equity in the acquiring company, which I also may have done differently, we walked away with everything.
And you mentioned earlier on the pod that in hindsight, you could have sold earlier. Could you speak more about that?
If I would have been in a place of realizing our value and not wanting to sort of hold on to a past version of my company, I could have brought more people over with me and some that were really valuable, and it would have been a great opportunity for them. At the end of the day, we could have retained what I think was one of the most beautiful and joyous parts of the company, which was our culture. I always sort of wonder, like, what if we would have done things differently? And what if I would have brought the right sort of professional support around me to help me understand what we could truly bring to the table? And I can't do that. We're a lot more intentional with how we structure them and set them up, knowing what we want to hold sacred and sort of hold on to and have be an arm that also produces our own original media properties. And then what is designed to sell. Although we have a lot of pride and love that we put into it, ultimately we're positioning to sell down the road and open to not bootstrapping it. Also readying ourselves for the emotional component of what happens when you sell a unit of business that you may be really attached to in terms of your identity. I'm so grateful for the experience that we had, because looking ahead, my wife and I are just so much more thoughtful about how we go about business.
And to anyone who is looking to sell their business, what would be your recommendation as to questions to ask or counsel to get or market research to do or anything else?
My advice to others is, instead of when you start to have conversations that you feel are, these are kind of secretive, or I just kind of want to kind of do it privately over here, to start tapping your network immediately and getting multiple perspectives, both from the people that you trust and, you know, the people that have been wildly successful, as well as the people that have maybe failed to leverage what they could have, like myself. And having a council of those that you trust to help guide you in the decision. And if there's an opportunity, to not delay the curiosity of, you know, exploring what it could mean. And just because you engage in the conversation doesn't mean that you're going to ink a deal. I think a sense of earnestness and humility is such an essential energy to bring to this, because you don't know what you don't know. I need to surround myself with that network, and not just have it be reactionary, but to do so proactively.
You were an owner for a decade. What was it like to go from owner to employee? What surprised you the most about being on the other side?
Transitioning from owner to employee, it wasn't a gentle one for me. I remember in some of my first meetings with leadership, I was very clear on what my intention was, to be joining forces with them. And that was to be a force for good. But essentially going from being the jefe, literally, being the chief, being the boss, making the final decisions, you know, I was used to making, you know, maybe 100 or more decisions a day. And while, you know, the scope of my work, I was still making a ton of decisions, you know, directing and producing and overseeing, you know, the media that we were producing. I thought it would be freeing to not have to oversee the operational capabilities of the business. But I also tended to realize there were some things that still needed to be smoothed out. And I couldn't help but be a bit of a squeaky wheel of like, hey, I think we can improve this. And here's how I'd recommend we improve it. That said, that wasn't in my job description, but that's what you do as an owner. You show up and you provide value. You solve problems. You're just designed and trained to help others grow. There was a big adjustment, realizing that, for example, my 360 review structure wasn't going to be carried over. And I think in that adjustment, instead of it being instantly like, there's so much I can sort of put down, I think the owner entrepreneurial mentality was, I kind of want to improve this, and I kind of want to do this, and instead of just letting it be. And that said, one of the great parts of the culture of the company that I came over to was in their belief in empowering others. And so that was, it's not like my suggestions fell on deaf ears. It's like you go to a bigger ship and you expect things to kind of move slower. And I think part of my experience was like, we're still moving fast, and we're just going to be okay with putting a lot of things together as, you know, you're landing the plane. And there's a sort of adrenaline that's related to that. And I think at the end of the day, I wish I could have relaxed into more being a creative leader rather than still being attached on some level to some of the operational efficiencies that could have been integrated, and sort of just like trusted the process and the people more because they were super talented.
And you mentioned that you're potentially looking to sell or merge with another company down the line. Would you want to stay on for a year if you were to sell again, or would you stay on for any different amount of time?
Yeah, I'm perfectly comfortable with the reality that I could provide a lot of value to stay on for 12 to 18 months in any sort of merger or acquisition on the horizon That said, we're trying to build in a way that, the existing capabilities are valuable without me as bottleneck, and instead me as sort of guide or advisor. That being said, we're also very intentional with how we've structured our units of business that we're building out to keep, essentially what is very sacred to us in our documentary production company that is scalable to only a certain extent, to let it, realizing a future that we want to sort of retain that, and then creating where I'm at today, Storyhouse Studio, that is strategically designed to sell. And, it sort of started from a place of how can I be home more for my family? And how can I create leverage and opportunity with a capability that we don't have right now? There's no way they're going to come here to Austin. You've got all of these productions from New York and Los Angeles that are looking for a studio just like ours when they come to Austin to produce. My existing clients have said instead of you flying out to LA, why don't we just do it at your studio? And so I've continued to be surprised with that. But then there's a whole other part of the market that we weren't reaching that we can now with the studio business. And the fact that it's built from the perspective of, a producer and a cinematographer of over 20 years. And the reality is, there's so few of these that exist. And so we've also looked at the opportunity of franchising this, because we do solve a big problem for a lot of higher level producers. I'm preparing myself to come along in the journey for 12 to 18 months if I have to in a merger or acquisition. That being said, we're in the middle of a hiring process where I'm being so much more selective in, the talent that we're bringing on, and knowing that at the end of the day, the business is going to be that much more valuable if I'm not the bottleneck. And I'm not the key, value within the company. But part of the conversation is also being clear, this is part of our goal. I would want you to stay on for, an extended amount of time. I'm looking not necessarily for a business partner here, but somebody that is dedicating themselves to the mission of the company and really owning the capabilities in a way that they can affect change, that they don't feel stunted by me with decision making or, operationally or, fulfillment. I want it to be that much more valuable because I'm more of a spokesperson and a guide and, an advisor than I am working in the business.
That's so insightful. So you're hiring people now with the intention that they stay on after the sale, and you are giving them the reins and the autonomy to make decisions without you having to micromanage them. Jefe, I have learned so much on this pod. We have 2 questions with which we usually wrap up the pod. So the first one is, how are you using AI in your business today?
Our creative development process, my goodness. It used to, especially in documentary production and branded content, the whole phase of scripting and, researching and ultimately, doing pre-interview calls and gathering insights and building perspective around the direction of a production used to take so much time. And now it's so much more efficient. A big thing we've pioneered is our team is now producing 2 animated series. They're just short form, and they're about mindfulness for children, both in public schools. It gets distributed in hospitals, etc. And we were given a great challenge by one of our top clients, which was, you don't like to hear this sometimes, but how can we make this cheaper and faster? The producer's triangle is typically you're trying to enforce this pick 2 of the 3, quality, speed and cost. And now I think a lot of production companies are being asked, like, hey, can you give us all at a high level? Because can't AI do that? And so what we've pioneered is we've got a team in Eastern Europe that is the prompt engineering sort of backbone that works in tandem with the artists, the 2D animators that are actually in New York. I hate to see folks that aren't adapting quickly lose jobs. And so I've developed this beautiful partnership between like the creatives and the more sort of like scientifically minded folks. And they've been learning so much from each other. And so my wife is now, I passed the baton to her to executive produce this project. And she just told me the other day, I think this is one of the best teams we've ever had operationally. I was scared for a lot of the craftspeople because a lot of them, there were some folks that we couldn't continue with because they resisted it so much. And so as a leader, a lot of it was about like, hey, we need to see this as a tool in our tool belt instead of something that we're in competition with. Instead of being AI replaced, let's be AI enhanced. So our animation, our post-production, and then the technical tools that, with the right training are within the programs that we've been used to using. You just don't know they're under the hood. At every stage of the process, pre-production, production, and post-production, that has improved our efficiency and lowered our costs because we were willing to lean in. That said, we've signed contracts that we normally wouldn't, but we've come to realize like, oh wow, we can still meet our 50% profit margin in this new way and also not close the door on these artists that we love working with.
I love the perspective on the AI enhanced team and having teams from Eastern Europe and the US collaborate and learn from each other. Can you share a bit more specifically any of the tools that you're using or any of the prompts or just your strategy with AI?
I don't know if you've heard of Higgsfield AI.
Yeah.
It is, as a video producer and as a cinematographer, using Kling, VO, some of these other tools, and just like the prompting parameters of, you iterate and you iterate and you iterate, and then you feel like you're kind of starting from scratch rather than building upon something. All of that is available in Higgsfield AI. And it's just, it has all of the other tools embedded within it, but the framework is such that, a high level, creative can engage with the tools and produce something, that is usually only attainable at, a commercial scale, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And so I highly recommend you open up Higgsfield AI and start playing because the capabilities are mind-blowing.
It really is amazing, and I'm sure I've only used it at like 0.5% of what you're using it.
I had so much fun experimenting on Christmas Eve. My kids were 6 and 4 at this last Christmas, and I realized this may be one of the last Christmases where they believe in Santa Claus. And so what did I do? I said, I'm going to stay up late and I'm going to try to film Santa when he comes. And so I created a video through the stair banister of our Christmas tree. And I was like, oh my gosh, Wilder Gaia, Santa's here. And then, I brought it into the AI tools. I integrated a Santa dropping one of the actual presents that was for them, and then him seeing me and sort of scurrying off. I probably spent a couple hours because I wanted to get it right. I wanted it to be believable. And so of everything I've produced this past year with AI tools, that's actually one of the ones I'm most proud of, because my very skeptical now 7-year-old would look at that video and was like, oh, I guess Santa is real.
Aww. I love that. What a tip for parents out there. Get ready for Christmas. Love that. And you mentioned that you are hosting a Claude workshop in your studio?
Yeah. So somebody that's within our Front Row Dads community has built an AI consulting company. And so we're going to help here in the studio host a bunch of entrepreneurs, both 6 and 7 figures, implement their Claude dashboard and realize what could be possible. I've always been concerned on the client acquisition side about how we implement these tools in a way that we're not just spamming people and destroying our reputation. And so I'm trying to integrate an approach where we're using these tools, we're maximizing the capabilities of Claude, and because of our laser focus of who we're able to target and the information we're able to collect, we then create, a video that's personalized to them, that's speaking to our assessment, our like a constructive criticism of what we see with their current brand presence and their content, and a genuine desire to want to help them. So Kate, can you imagine the difference between just getting a generic prospecting email that's maybe misinterpreting what your brand does, and it just doesn't have a lot of humanity to it, versus having used the tools to target the right folks, do the right research, and then to get a very personalized Loom direct to camera, speaking to the unique constructive criticism of how we can help, how we can serve, how we can help a leader scale with story, in a way that feels like, wow, these folks have really done their research. It's not just like this sort of shotgun spray and pray. We implicitly trust them because of the time that they've invested in it. That said, it's like, that's how I see like those tools targeting, acquiring the right information in a way that we can scale that. We've enjoyed for years and years just strong referrals because of that, the ecosystem of clients that we've had. But as we sort of branch out and scale, we're trying to keep the humanity in the strategic approach, but still be AI enhanced in who and how we find folks, and be empowered by the information that actually helps us sell at the end of the day.
Oh, using AI plus Loom is a great tip. I know you said you want to keep the humanity, but you could probably use an AI avatar down the line for that as well.
We've actually played with some AI avatars for other elements of on the production side, and it's going to take some time, but it's going to get there. So
yeah,
we're open.
Jefe, thank you so much for sharing all of those insights. Who else should we have on the pod?
Oh my goodness. Have you heard of Tucker Max with Scribe Media?
No, I haven't, but I will look him up afterwards.
Yeah, he's one of several front row dads in this entrepreneurial fathers community, and he has an incredible story, along with several other folks, ranging from topics of like a blog about psychedelic research and therapy that was acquired. That's Henry Winslow, who is like one of the world's best yogis, to my buddy Garrett, that's actually an Olympic gold medalist that has developed some really exciting companies involved with both travel and outdoor education.
Jefe, thank you so much for coming on. Truly a pleasure.
Thank you so much.